Nut and Fancy Part 2, talking about the outstanding FNP-9 semi-automatic service pistol. I covered philosophy of use, weight, firepower, durability, and reliability. Ending with accuracy. Here's an interesting thing that I want to show you guys about the FNP that I just don't know how I feel about it, but I'm just going to show you. Look at by the way, all these guns were safety checked. They always are. I just generally don't anymore spend time on that. I've got too much to cover. But look at the thickness of the barrel. And I'm going to jump ahead and talk about field strip, because in order to show you the thickness adequately, I need to field strip the gun. The field stripping of the FNP-9 is extremely simple. I love it. It's Glock-like simplicity. See that? In fact, I think of the FNP-9 honestly as kind of an amalgamation between an H&K USP and a SIG. If I were to put those two guns and mix them up, it seems like that's what I would get with an FNP-9. It seems a very accurate description of the gun. Man, what an easy gun to field strip. Did you see that? Just rotate the lever. Very SIG-like. That's just how SIGs field strip as well. Anyways, I was telling you about the barrel. I want to show you how thin the barrel is on the FNP. You decide for yourself if that's important. Let me take the Glock barrel out real quick so I can show you. Okay, here's the Glock 17 barrel. Couple things you're going to notice is, first, the 17 barrel is longer. And in a handgun design, in my opinion, that's kind of important. Even that little half inch or so will give us a little bit more velocity as the powder is able to burn more completely. Now, granted, there's some specialty rounds that are specifically designed to burn quickly in a short-barreled gun. Not that this is a short-barreled gun. However, I do prefer, in a service pistol, remember going back to philosophy of use, that's how I see the FNP-9 as a service pistol. I generally do prefer to have a little bit longer length. But that's an aside. Look at the differences in thicknesses. And what I'm talking about is the barrel wall thickness. This is FNP-9 on the right. There's your Glock 17 on the left. This is a much thinner barrel. And there is your weight difference right there. Remember, I told you that there is a weight difference between the two guns, about 3/4 of an ounce. That might be it right there. Now, I've talked to some users who have some trigger time on the FNP-9, and they don't think that the relative thinness of the barrel is an issue. They haven't seen the stringing of shots as it's been fired, nor do they think that it relegates itself to slow fire. They say, hey, no problems. By the way, while we got the gun apart, look at the rails that the FNP rides on. These are really nice, long steel rails right here. And then there's your rear rails in the back. And this, against the Glock design, just has shorter ones up front. And then, of course, the ones that engage in the back. So I think, truth be told, that this is a better system right here. You have more steel and more of a length that the slide rides upon. So just an aside. And it goes back just as easily. But I wanted to show you guys that that barrel is kind of on the thin side for the FNP. Don't know if that's a huge consideration, just be advised. But again, accuracy, and from what I can gather, is pretty much outstanding. That takes us to ergonomics. It's a home run with the FNP-9 in most respects for ergonomics. As I hold the gun, as I compare it against maybe the Glock, and I'm going to have to put this Glock back together while I talk, it is just as ergonomic, maybe even a little bit more ergonomic than the Glock 17, truth be told. Now, some guys may say, well, I love the Glock, but I don't really like the angle of the grip, because it is a more of a acute angle, i.e. a steeper angle, as opposed to a more vertical angle like a 1911. Nut and Fancy does not find that to be a problem. I think fine with it either way, but I understand it, and if I was given a choice on a new gun, and if all things being equal, I would prefer a 1911 grip angle, truth be told. I think it does point better, more intuitively, and I feel that the FNP-9 has a 1911 grip angle. In other words, it points, if you were to close your eyes, bring the gun up and point it, points well. Just an aside, not a showstopper, it's a data point. The grip itself feels very good. Now keep in mind, my hands are large. I wear a large size glove, and so for me, the FNP-9 feels good. For a female shooter, maybe a dude with smaller hands, maybe not so much. Maybe you would prefer the slimmer grip, much slimmer grip of the Ruger SR9. And let's look at the differences here. Look, that's SR9 on the left. There's your FNP-9 on the right. Big differences. This is much thicker, and you can really tell it when you feel it. But to me, I almost prefer the grip of the FNP-9 a little bit more because it's more ergonomic. Okay, it feels good. It has stippling on the back arch strap on the front, kind of cosmetic stippling there on the side, not super functional. The trigger is nice. There's no humps within the trigger guard like there are with the H&K USP design. Doesn't have a hooked trigger guard, which I do prefer, contrary to every gun writer in the world. But at least FN put some type of checkering on there in case you decide to rest your hand on there, which, crazy as it may sound, I do when I shoot, and I shoot well that way. Sorry, a little bit of blip there. The battery died. I was telling you that there's different versions and finishes of the FNP pistols. One of them is a flat, dark earth version. I don't have the FN catalog with me right now, so sorry. I really wish I brought it. I could have shown you, nor do I have one on my laptop nearby. But I do know this. The flat, dark earth version of the FNP-9 is not a double action only to single action mechanism with a dedicated hammer drop like this one is. What it is it's kind of like the Beretta Model 92 or M9 series, where you can carry it cocked and locked, sweep the safety up, and carry it in condition 1. I wish they would offer this version of mechanism in the flat dark earth. They do offer it in a pitch black model with a blackened slide, which I probably prefer. This is a very good looking gun too. However, I kind of would like it in full on tactical, or even better yet, flat dark earth. That's just a cosmetic preference for me though. But what I was going to, we're talking about ergonomics here. Remember I told you that the F&P series of pistols is kind of a blend of H&K USP and also SIG. And it's SIG-like in that the battery of arms is identical. In other words, for the first shot, and again, this is safety check, for the first shot, we go traditional double action. And I'm not going to dry fire this new gun. I just don't believe in that without a snap cap. So we dry fire it, bam, and then the gun ends up in a cocked condition. Then we transition to single action shooting. If we want to drop the hammer, we just use this, the dedicated hammer drop, very SIG-like. Bam, we just drop it down. When I say bam, I mean we lowered the hammer safely, not shot the gun. And there's no safeties here. You don't need them. Totally don't. Here's your slide release lever. This is your takedown lever. Very SIG-like. In fact, identical to SIG. And that's a good thing, because SIG got it right. You know, copying is the sincerest form of flattery, and F&P is copying the SIG design in this respect, and thank heavens, great design. They use a rounded hammer here. I like that. That's cool. That is in contrast to the SIG design, but cool, no problems there. Now, it does have a 100% polymer trigger. If you watch my H&K USP review videos, I criticize them for having flex. And I have to say the same thing for the F&P, although it's very, very minimal. If I hold the hammer down so I can't pull it, and I pull the hammer won't cock, then I pull it, you can see that indeed that 100% polymer trigger will flex a little bit. Now, when we're actually firing the gun, is that flex taking place? Yeah, I can pretty much guarantee you that it is. However, it's very stiff as far as polymer goes, and for the most part, I'm trying to see if that has a steel insert in that trigger. I can't really tell. It probably does. For the most part, it's not noticeable to me. However, when I shoot the USP, and again, I've shot the USP for thousands upon thousands of rounds, I always am thinking about it. It's a much more flexy trigger. Just a little aside there. So, ergonomics on the FNP-9, I would term outstanding. From grip angle, thickness of grip, for my size. And again, I don't really think that you have to have interchangeable back straps to get it right. I know the SR9 does have that. On my review, I showed you that you can rotate it to a flat mainspring or a rounded arch option if you want. I don't really see the need for that. Very SIG-like right through here. That looks just like a SIG to me. And that's a good thing again. It fits well. Then you have a little indentation here so we can get a nice tight grip on there using our 3 fingers, decent. Outstanding ergonomics. Now, here comes a criticism for the FNP. If you look how the bore sits in relation to your hand, it is a higher axis compared against, let's say, the Glock. The Glock sits lower in your hand, and that means you're going to have a quicker follow-up shot capability versus maybe an FNP-9. At least in theory. How about the SR9? Same thing, SR9, and I mentioned this in my review of the SR9, has an outstanding low bore axis in your hand. They really did a good job in putting the grip high in relation to the slide, so that barrel is about as low as it can be within your hand. Again, that aids us in quick follow-up shots. To me, that's not really a showstopper for the FNP-9. I think it'll shoot very nicely, but it's a criticism, and I think it's a valid one. The bore definitely sits higher in your hand. This distance is longer than the Glock and SR9, and probably a lot of other designs as well. Enough on ergonomics. How about simplicity, ease of use? Well, you know, I just showed you how easy it is to field strip. I mean, it's way easy. It's just no problem at all. The parts are probably akin to a SIG 226. Probably not as simple as a Glock 17. However, few things are as far as semi-automatic pistols go. Maybe just a little bit simpler than SR9. But again, I'm not a mechanical engineer, nor am I going to take these guns apart or even look at the diagrams. So there's guys that know a lot more about this than I do, truth be told. But for the average user, simplicity of the parts and how it's manufactured won't be an issue. Simplicity of use, let's talk about that. I love it. I just told you about the battery arms, how it's ergonomic and very SIG-like, that there's no goofy safeties to worry about. And sadly, the Ruger SR9 does have a safety to worry about, which is superfluous now that they've added the safety mechanism to the trigger, as I mentioned in my video. This safety is not needed now that we have a Glock-type safe action trigger on the SR9. Gladly, the FNP-9 doesn't have such wasted and superfluous features like that. Dedicated hammer drop, dedicated slide release, enough said, simple. And unlike SIG, they didn't try to change, I'm sorry, not SIG, but USP, they didn't try to change the world with a proprietary magazine release. It's a magazine release that everybody in the world uses right where it should be, at the base of the trigger guard, real easy to actuate, just simple, 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 simple. How about the sights on the FNP-9? Very standard 3-dot variety. They pick up well, align well, and they're very akin to the Glock sights. So I wouldn't say one has the advantage over the other one. And I really haven't been doing that as I go along, as far as saying, the Glock's better or the FNP's better. And it's hard for me to do that because the FNP is such an apparently squared away design. I just don't think the Glock reigns supreme over it. I don't. Or the SR9 or the SIG, in my opinion. I think the FNP-9 and the 40 and 45 versions will avail themselves quite well as time goes on. So field strip, already covered that. Accessories. This is where maybe it's going to lose out. I mean, what can compare against the Glock series for accessories? And I've already talked about what I'm talking about. Sights, trigger options, barrel options, you know, suppressors that are available, extended barrels, different grip options, like this user has decal grip on it, magazine varieties. You have a 33 round magazine. By the way, I forgot to mention that in firepower, Glock still reigns supreme because it takes those 33 round Glock 18 mags. But there's a lot more accessories, including holster options for the Glock 17 series. The SR9, of course, like I mentioned, is a newcomer on the block. It's going to take a long time for it to have the type of accessories that Glock has, and enough said about that in its video. But the FNP-9 is so new that I'm really not sure if there's aftermarket sights available for it and what it can take. Now, it has a non-proprietary rail on it, just like the Glock and the SR9 does. Very nice. That means we can put tactical lights and lasers on there. Very nice. But it's very similar shape to both Glock and USP, so it's very possible that holsters that fit those guns will indeed fit your FNP-9. By the way, I forgot to mention the length of sight radius on the guns. Glock wins on that. If you line up the sights and look, there is just a little bit of sight radius advantage Glock. Same with the SR9, I won't show you. But a little bit shorter slide, a little bit shorter barrel like I showed you earlier. So that's accessories. And I'm sure I'm missing something. Price. This is what's amazing about the FNP-9, that it is pretty darn affordable for what you get. A world-class semi-automatic service pistol, in my opinion. And this is what Impact's selling it for. And you might even find it for cheaper, but I think that's a reasonable price. And by the way, support Impact, because they support the Nut and Fancy project. Very cool. You can order through Impact and have it sent to your own dealer at your state. So that is a lot cheaper than a SIG. It's a lot cheaper than a USP. It, in some locales, might be even cheaper than a Glock. Probably is. So this, in my opinion, makes the FNP-9 a high-value gun on the order of the SR9. So the SR9 is actually in the same price range. So great job, FN, by providing that. So high value gun, and that finally takes us to track record. What's the track record like? Well, I've kind of spoken to this as the review's gone on. It's just too new to know. What we really need is have the FNP series of pistols in whatever caliber adopted by a major police department, and they need to hit the streets and take out some bad guys with them. That's just the way it needs to go. Because it's not until a law enforcement agency, maybe a military entity of some sort, adopts a pistol that we can really get some good feedback as to how it works. Because then it's in the hands of non-gun people. People that don't know about guns, that may not be the best marksman out there. And sorry, but most cops suck for marksmanship and gun handling. They just do. It's not their thing. And they just do it by, some cops are awesome. In my experience, some are not so awesome. But when you get shooters like that, and you give them a gun like the FNP, and you just year after year see how it runs, you learn a heck of a lot about the design. That, again, is why the Glock reigns supreme in law enforcement, because it's a design that has proven itself quite capable in law enforcement circles. So track record, jury's out. That's it, man. End of part 2, end of my review of the FNP-9. I covered all these talking points. And honestly, dudes, it is an outstanding gun, high value. Isn't that surprising? To me, that surprises me, that from a company like FN, that the price is reasonable on a gun of this quality, this lightweight, as ergonomic as it is. Yeah, it has a couple minor drawbacks, as I've said, as the review's gone on. But by and large, the FNP series of pistols appears to be yet another home run from the FN Herstal design team. Look into it seriously and buy it while you can. By the way, join the NRA and give lots of money to the NRA ILA so you can have your rights maintained to defend your family and friends. All right, guys, that's it. Nut Fancy signing off. Thanks for all the support. We'll talk to you later.